the agenda.
Second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
we don't have announcements on the agenda, but I have an announcement, so I'd like to modify to add that.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion. Okay, we have a motion to modify the agenda to add announcements. Second. All right. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, now approval of the agenda as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The agenda is approved. Yes. Ms. Pattison.
All right, my announcement is that I am resigning from the board. I no longer feel that I can serve the community effectively in this role. As board members, we have a responsibility to be good stewards of the town's resources in order to provide high quality, reliable, and equitable services to our community. I don't believe that this board is meeting our responsibilities. My hope is that stepping down will give someone else the opportunity to step up. Thanks to the voters of Paonia for giving me the opportunity to serve, and to the trustees and staff for the work that you do. Thanks most of all to every person who gives of their time to participate in, report on, or just to be aware of what's happening in town government. When our community members are unhappy with what's happening here, that isn't a problem, it's a symptom. We will never get to the root of a problem if we dismiss every critical comment as a personal attack. I have learned so much because of people who understand what I don't and who have the courage to call me out, to call all of us out, when we can do better. So thank you especially to the public. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Pattison. Are effective immediately? You're resigning effective immediately?
Effective immediately.
Okay, I am so sorry to see you go. I am very sorry. Okay. So do we still have a quorum at this point with 3 board members? Because I don't count toward a quorum, I believe. Yeah. I thought we had to have 4.
So with 2 open seats and Karen being the only one missing, I believe you would have a quorum, but I will double check with Bo, but Karen will be here in just a moment, so if we want to adjourn until she arrives.
Yeah, I think we should do that. All right, thank you.
But I will check with Bo on a quorum status when you
Yes,
have
please.
open seats,
Okay.
because they don't count as a member, an open seat. To open, included in the packet are the documents with the complete up-to-date budget. You'll notice, starting on the first page of the general fund administration, you will see that Cindy did add a budget note section to the side so that you could see what had any modifications and what that modification came from. We've also included the requested documents that show the percentage allocation change from all the different funds from 2020 through 2022. And the allocation budget sheet that was requested, that was similar to the 2018 allocation sheet, is included. And a brief history of the payroll for each department is also included in the packet. We're hopeful that we'll be able to do a quick run through of it, answer any questions, go over the numbers to show where scenario 6 has been implemented into the water fund, and be able to tie up and finalize things in time for the budget hearing at the next meeting.
Okay, so let's do the run through, and then if anyone, yeah, Tammy.
If I may, there's something big missing from this budget, and that's the budget message. If somebody were to pick up this, to open this document up, they would not know what is happening. This is not a complete budget. We have to have the budget message. It was in the October 26th packet. It needs to be revised, and it needs to be included. This is not a complete budget without the budget message.
That is correct. The revisions were given and are being implemented into the budget message and would be presented with the full budget for the public hearing, which is at the 23rd meeting.
So that will be our sole chance to have a look at the budget message, which could take some time. I get that there's a lot to do with that, but I do not believe we have been presented a full budget, and I don't think that is right. I don't want to wait until the next meeting to get a look at it, to wait until Friday night, Monday morning to get a look at it. It's a very long document, and it is a very important part of the budget. So I'm just protesting here. I'm really upset about this. This is our biggest document of the year that we will be considering, and that budget message explains it. And for anybody to go through this and want to make sure that it's right, there's no budget message to compare it with.
Okay. Objection noted, Tammy. All right, let's move on with going through the budget, the numbers.
So we can start on page 1, but like I said, the updates have been made. If we were hoping to have questions from the board on any of the updates that were made and why they were made until we get to the water section. And then we would go over to show how scenario 6 was implemented.
All right, so let's just open it up for questions from the board on any part of the budget. Yes, Tammy.
Okay, I have here an article from the North Fork Times. Paonia budget is a work in progress. And I had to read this several times over until I really got what I see as something I am even more concerned with. First of all, and I don't want to get into this too much, this was not board driven. We now have a week before our public hearing, and we have a new way of looking at things. It is not what we expected. It is very different, and I'm concerned with some of the comments in this article and how it affects the budget and how it affects the board's ability to control this budget. So it says I am budgeting, she's budgeting the entire amount. This is a record budget, and the entire amount will be up for spending. It still rolls into the reserves, and this doesn't make much sense, but I think I get it. The reserves will maintain until we do use it for a project or it gets relocated to a different project. But what really, really got to me is that with the new environment, we have these contingencies, she says, because of the pandemic, because of fluctuating prices, which we really don't know is what it's going to do to us. We don't know. But what I read is that when there are changes to the budget, it is not coming back to us. It is all budgeted, and the staff will decide when to move money. And if I'm wrong in reading how this reads, please tell me. It sounds like you want to have a very flexible budget. You want to have contingencies. And if you don't, you have to go back and amend the budget every time, and that's a lot of work. This budget has to come back to us when it's amended every time. So can you please explain to me how this is going to work? It sounds to me like it's circumventing the board.
It is
and
not. It's a misinterpretation.
Please explain
Yes.
that then.
So-
I was really,
that-
really upset to read this.
So again, you give an interview to a person and you give them they ask a question, you give an answer. The answer sometimes is given in a way that you understand it, but potentially they don't. So no, What that's saying is that what was included in this budget and has been from day one and has been stated was all of the funds were included in the budget. And that is so that the board has the availability. All of it has to come back to the board. Anything over, according to the purchasing policy, which we've gone over and we've adhered to since the discussion was had and clarification was given, those things have to come back to you. So when they're talking about any revisions, she's talking about the required process that say you budget and you left, which we can do it this way. It's possible. We've done it this way before. If you keep, these are spitball numbers, they don't relate back to anything. If you keep $300,000 in your reserve, and then when we talk about costs, that we do know. Costs have continually gone up. Information that I'm forwarding from SGM shows that our water costs have gone up approximately 20% every year, year over year since 2019. So if you leave it in reserves and then you find that because of those cost increases that we can't account for, that it's more, there's a process that you have to go through via resolution and reporting to the state and to modify your budget. Every time you modify your budget and you pull funds from reserve, you have to do that. So budgeting it now, knowing that there's no intent to expend all of that funds, removes that requirement. But everything has to come back to the board that's over the purchasing policy dollar amounts that require board approval. So yes, it is a misinterpretation of the way that it's stated in the article. We, she means the town, the board. It was not a we as in the staff.
So if I may, an explanation of that would have been very welcome. As a former reporter, I know that things can get misinterpreted, taken out of context, and so forth. But what I am reading here is it's too much work to bring it back to the board. We just want to do it ourselves. And it would have been nice to know that before this meeting, to
Right.
just do some damage control, let us know what's going on. So
And of
thank you for the explanation, but it still just seems really, and this is not, again, an attack on anybody. It just sounds fishy. It would have been great to have an explanation. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. And what I would say to that is exactly that it wasn't intended to be fishy or anything secretive, because if it was, first, we don't do that, and second, if we did, we wouldn't be telling the news reporter about it. But it absolutely is an interpretation, and when you speak the language day in and day out, year over year, sometimes you forget that someone else might not understand that. And so that was not the intention.
It still doesn't explain why this was done without some board direction, or at least talking to the board about it first. I mean, if that conversation was held, it wasn't clear. It would have been nice to know that we were going to see some big changes, or at least a different way of doing things. And to get this, hey, this is just a new way of doing things, a week before the before the public hearing, was a shock. And I think, but I would like to say, well, I've got the floor, and then I'll be done with this. I do agree with one thing, and that is that the board has not provided clear direction to Cindy, to Corinne. We may have had our different disagreements, but we never really. I think there were some requests that were made that it sounds like they're finally getting back to the budget, but I do want to agree with former trustee Pattison in that this board has not been giving good direction, and for that I apologize for my part in not realizing that we weren't being really clear.
And I would say from the staff side that the same. If we're not being clear, then we need to work better on continuing to elaborate and speak and re-speak, because knowing that those were in here, I do know that we did at the very beginning of the very first budget workshop discussed that we were budgeting all funds, and so maybe it wasn't clear because we didn't specifically state that the reserve was included in that, and that's not clear. because it is a change, and you're thinking, of course, we're budgeting all the funds because we always do. So, yeah.
If I can explain, what I thought was there will be no reserves. We're just going to have everything and we're going to try and spend it.
Do you have any other questions on the budget? You know, the specifics, Tammy? I mean, as long as
No.
you got the floor, you can go ahead and.
Thank you. Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Other questions from the board? Yes, Dave.
A couple things. First of all, I think what we're hearing right now is just a general mistrust of intentions of people. And we have we don't have a treasurer, and I think it's really important for the board to start looking at, I think because we've had embezzlement in our past, we really need to have that other set of eyes. And this is not because we expect malfeasance or expect that people have bad intent, but an extra set of eyes never hurts. And so I really think the idea of that. I've been in the public sector a lot. I know how people can manipulate budgets. I can understand an intent not to have to go through a lot of hoops, but I would hope that staff would hear that we really want to be involved. We want to be actually in the weeds on this stuff. So when there are changes in the budget, we'd like to know about it. If there is a need to modify things, even though it may be a pain and we have to post it, and we have to go through a public process, I think it's just good practice given the element of mistrust we have. So, you know, first of all, I would like to make a motion that we put the treasurer position on the agenda for the next meeting. Is it on? Okay, great. So I don't need to make that motion. Okay, good.
Any other questions about the budget from anyone? Yes, Dave.
Well, given what Tammy said that I would agree with is that we have not given good direction. And that was a true statement. Anyway, it seems that the best use of our time tonight would be to ask what decisions this board needs to make in order to move this process forward, rather than going point by point through the budget or doing an overview of it, and to hear from the public what they would like to hear us decide on. And in the context of what are the most important decisions we can make, I think that would be the best use of our time tonight, rather than picking through the weeds, which is what we've done in the past, and having discussions about what's right or wrong, but then not giving clear direction.
Mayor, if I may. Sorry, I forget that this is a special meeting and not a work session, so I don't want to speak out of turn. So maybe would help a little bit is some of the larger changes as well, just to kind of go over those a little. I mean, if you look at the very first page, General Fund Administration, the last line, you'll notice that the grant revenue is dramatically different, and there's the notation that we moved the master plan. So after the last meeting, and again, the conversation and community input on the cost to have the master plan update done, Cindy and I were brainstorming over the week. We were discussing the switching things up with the police vehicle. Like we discussed that at the last meeting. We had taken the PD vehicle purchase for 2022 while a new chief is reestablished out of the budget. And so that opened up some monies, and in the discussion, a thought occurred to us. A capital improvement plan is a capital improvement plan. Can you fund your capital improvement update through capital expenditures? Through that budget that we zero out every year, that it all is expended, because it's that 1% that goes to capital improvements for the year. So Cindy reached out to the auditors, I reached out to our town attorney, and both said yes. The town attorney said, actually, that's a pretty common practice. So we moved that out of the budget, which freed up money in the budget to go to other areas, and we put the majority of that out of capital expenditures instead of the purchase of a police vehicle in 2022. So that was a big change that's made. That's $70,000. It was a grant match of $35,000. So. It's the last line on the first page.
I would really like the plan number 6 explained, how that has shown up in the budget.
Okay.
Can we have a reminder that that was the $5 increase, correct? Yes, just
Yes,
want to
the
make sure.
$5 base and a modification to the tier schedule, which will be presented at the December 14th meeting with all those modifications that are included in the budget will also be broken out via resolution to be accepted by the board. Page 17 in the printed packet that was on the counter. Cindy's going to go over that part with you, so she's opening up another document.
So the top part is revenue. Okay, so as you can see, if you look at the revenue of water, you'll see under the 2020 budget, there was a total of $1,138,000 in revenue, with the changes to the base rate and to the usage rate. So it doesn't, Ty didn't have it broken out the same way as I did, and there wasn't any easy way to get that information. So it's 1.5 million estimated, which all of that revenue goes to the capital outlay, which is the altitude valve and the tank lining. Yes, it is. The top box that says revenue. Oh, it's two numbers added together. It's the
Yeah.
usage number. It's usage and base rate added together will be our total revenue, which equals the 1.5 million, which is what we need to have the 800 or 942,000, which will pay for with all the revenues. So you have the base rate, the usage, the incidentals, the grant funds, and the leftover reserves, and all of that is going to go to the 942,000 for the tank lining. And that will hold there until we get the tank lining done. Because as costs increase, we're gonna, and then if we don't, so let me try something else. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I'm gonna try. All right, so we have estimated revenue from Ty Long per his expectations of the information from the study or from the analysis. That will give us 697,000.
Okay.
We have, per his analysis, 806,000 in usage. That's if everybody uses an equivalent amount of water to what they used in 2020. Then we have sales and service, which is for change in accounts, which is for final reads, which is for different incidentals billing wise. That's about 7,000. We have another 6,000 estimated coming from the bulk water system. We have the 369,000 coming from grant funds. We have 350 coming from penalties, 1,000 for rent, and then we're using all of the excess reserves. This is the excess reserves to then fund sorry. Thank you. Oh, that's why it did that. So it's 267,000 of payroll, the Norris retirement, work comp, office supplies, operating supplies, postage, legal services and engineering, audit, repairs and maintenance, vehicle repair or vehicle expense, shop expense, travel and meetings, insurance, utilities, publication.
We're on the 18. 24. So she's reading the account descriptions on the left side.
On the screen and on the packet, the packet is identical to the screen. She's highlighting the number and providing you, which the number is in column N, and the account description is in column G. So she's highlighting the amount and telling you the account description, so you know what that amount references back to. So the 5,088 references back to our telephone charges for the telephone services at the water plants for the year.
So would it be easier to say everything that has an explanation by it or a note by it, or is it not that simple? Because you were going pretty fast.
We can look at those if that's what you want to look at. So
I don't know if I need to look at each one, but
right, because the
Okay.
amount of the change is next to it. So this is where they did that modification. So,
Okay.
and of course, if it's in parentheses, it's a negative or a reduction. If it's not in parentheses, it's added to an increase.
So everything with a change? Or is that too
Everything
simplified?
with it, what do you mean?
It's
Well,
everything.
it says the dollar change in the last column. Those are all part of Plan 6 or
No.
number 6? No? Okay,
The only effect of plant changing to the 6
That's right.
is these two numbers right here. It went from these 4 numbers to these 2 numbers. That's the only difference regarding scenario 6. And the outcome of that is that we have $942,000 to apply to the lining of the tank and the altitude valve.
So at least as far as policy goes, what I appreciate is the reallocation of salaries away from the utility. What I think I'm seeing is that the reallocations happened. And so we aren't allocating as much administrative salaries to the water that we used to. Is that correct?
That is correct. And
So
those,
that's part of why the changes have happened.
and
and-
those sheets are also included in here as well, so you can see that and
Okay.
go over it if you desire.
And the second thing I saw that was really good is those impact fees were taken out. And I think this is what we talked about last time, is get those impact fees out of there because it's hurting the water fund too much. We'd rather not see that money go into streets for now because it's more critical to do water. And that's an example of a policy decision that we're making that's trying to put less cost on the water so we don't have to raise it quite so much.
So is that the sum and total of the scenario 6?
The two numbers in
Yeah.
revenue and the fact that it's increased the amount that we're going to use for the tank is the result of scenario 6.
Okay, great. And at this point in time, okay, there have been, what is the current cost estimate for that altitude valve and tank lining?
The altitude valve is still the 10,000 for engineering and the 40,000 for the vault valve. So because it hasn't been expended yet, we're still hopeful to get it done this year, but the engineering has not been finalized. And so time is ticking away. If it isn't, then of course that money is carried forward and is included into this budget. They're still, SGM is still estimating 800,000 to $1 million based on dive results. We did receive some results that were not in our favor. I haven't had a chance to look over those yet. We just got them at the end of the week. But there's some, they did a lead test to test the lining in the tank and the exterior of the tank. And we do have lead percentages in that lining. And so that will require lead mitigation on the exterior and interior. And we're waiting. That's supposed to be followed up with a cost estimate of what that will cost. And that may very well put this project off. We may find that we are not able to do this. There was another entity that looked at it briefly and it suggested go for the grant, do it in the fall. Fall is not a good time for us to do this. We cannot do it in the fall. So while it was our intention and hope to get it done sooner than later and stop putting things off, we might have to put it off until spring of 23 if we find that the lead costs exceed what we can afford to pay in 2022 and look for a grant. So once we get that result, once I've reviewed the results and we get that money, I expect to bring that to the board probably at the next meeting.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board? All right, from the public. Yes, Paige.
So far, so good. So I'm going to start from recent and go to the beginning of the meeting. So could you describe again? So they found there is lead in the interior of the 2 million gallon tank and the exterior?
Instead of my microphone. That's correct. They do a lead testing for the, on the lining, on the interior of the lining, interior and exterior. And yes, they did find that there is a percentage of lead. It's not seeping into the water. The water is lead tested, but there is in the coating that they used in the tank. So when we drain that and we start messing with that, it would release lead when they start to recoat. So we'll have to do lead mitigation.
So it'll be particulates of the old lining that have some lead. And
Yes.
I brought this up at the last meeting, but it seems like that lining didn't last as long as the new linings will.
True, that is
Because it was
accurate.
2005 and 2015, it looks awful.
Yes.
So, okay, thanks. And the exterior is just because it's lead paint was used at some point?
They have there's a sealant on the exterior as well. So because there's water seepage through concrete, and the exterior paint that they used on it has lead in it as well. I
Okay.
believe the exterior has an 8%, and the interior is either 13% or 18%. I want to say it's 18, but it may be because it was 8% on the outside. So I'd have to look at it again to confirm that, but I will have the actual numbers and the information to the board.
So do you have to get the exterior cleaned up in order to use the tank once the interior is cleaned up?
Yes, both will have to be done.
And that was not anticipated, that
No,
the
it was not.
exterior of that tank was going to, okay,
No, it was not.
we have a big problem.
We do.
So a couple things, you were saying earlier that you took the grant money that you want to get for the master plan and you put it in capital improvements,
Correct.
even though capital improvements are normally tangible
Yes,
things, and that's okay to do.
we
apparently.
confirmed, yes.
Could I ask that you explain that in your, the administrator's overview? Simply because that's the opposite of how capital improvements are defined.
Yes,
Okay, I think that would help some future confusion.
okay.
Some of the other question I have is, so last year's budget was approximately 5.7 million. This one is being proposed at about 6.3, and a lot of that's associated with reserves, it looks like, but I'm not sure. Could you actually, and the difference is about $500,000. So my question is, there's a real difference between reserves and budgeted items. So if it's budgeted, it can be spent, of course, within the $10,000 limit. If it's in reserves, it gives you some latitude. It gives the trustees some latitude to spend it. I mean, it doesn't, you can reassign it and maybe redo the budget. So I'm curious as to how many, what's the total amount of reserves that are going to be left, because it's embedded in various tables. Oh, actually, I take that back. You know what? It's in the allocations table. And it looked like it was about, no, I can't remember, about 800,000, was it? And then I have one, and I'm sorry, I didn't carry it over with me, I don't think. Oh, maybe I did. Oh, yes, I did. Reserves is a total, actually, it's much less than I thought. 354,000. Okay, which is a lot less than last year. So I'm assuming they got spent, right? So I just have another question about ties scenario 6. So you're going to go for a $5 base rate, and then have you redone the tiers? And the reason I ask is because this table, I think it's still not that one, still had the same amount of money as you had projected when you were going to add $8 to every base rate. So are you making the tiers meet that 155,000 rather than?
That is what
So
scenario 6 did. So yes.
You're engineering the tiers and the $5 to come up to 155,000.
Right. So you still come out to the same amount of money, but the direction of the board was to put more on that,
Okay.
on the actual usage instead of base rate. So that's exactly what that does.
So will you be updating the summary to show the differences in the base rates?
The summary,
The budget message?
yes, absolutely.
So have you, gone down to less tiers?
Yes, there's 8 tiers instead of 12.
Okay. Thank you. That wasn't clear. And
It's the tiers exactly how they were presented in the
In his
cost
report.
analysis at the last meeting.
okay, thank you. And one last question. It's on park expenditures, which is page 13 of the packet. And my question had to do with, let's see, it's row 164670. Sorry, capital outlay. I was wondering what the 1,300 capital outlay, again, if I understand it correctly, goes with capital improvements. It goes towards tangibles. Sorry. Is everybody there?
The capital outlay is 13,500.
Yeah.
The 3,000 is the contract services.
Okay, and I just wondered what that was going towards. And one of the other reasons I asked that is because this packet does not have this particular table. Hang on, let me get it without dropping everything. The table that was provided, gosh, I'm not sure which packet, capital improvement allocations for 2022.
Right.
And that has not been presented again, so again,
That's not the same thing. This is the, it comes out to the total of the 13.5, but these are the specific things that the board discussed and also came from SGM's inventory and
Yes.
CIP. So it's and from our CIRSA annual, and so it's the peony beds, the grass improvement, the bathroom upgrade at the park, the path or the removal of the shed and replacement of the shed there that is dangerous, and the hill stabilization.
okay, thank you. So then one last question is, so this table we had presented to us, which had equipment of 104,000, vehicles 135,000. So I do not understand where this information is now in this budget. Is it actually extractable like this now? Are you going to have this similar table in next week's draft budget?
Yeah, and that was in the last meeting packet as well. Yes.
Okay, so
Fund 50 on, if you look behind you, what page is it in
Oh.
the packet? Do you have it? Oh, we'll look on the packet and see if I can find a page number for you, but Fund 50 is where the capital.
and that's in this packet, sorry. I'm getting, there we go.
It's 16 of the printed packet. So the board packet, it's going to be page,
Is it 22? 22. Thanks for pointing that out. And so I guess now, will there still be a more prescriptive table in the final budget rather than just the totals of total of 230,000, which I have no idea how that matches up with this capital improvement allocations in 2022 table.
that sheet is uploaded into ClearGov, so it will be part of
This
the.
will be there too?
Yes.
Okay, and will the numbers correspond to this 50 table? Okay. All right, I think those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paige. Okay, yes, Joni.
Joan Hunt, 20 North Fork. I wanted to go back to what Tammy said about I think it's called the budget message. And that already exists as of 10/26 and that we need to review it? Is that what you were saying?
We have seen the first version of it. There will be an updated version
But I'd be
that comes
happy
with
to
the
go make
version.
copies. I mean, I'm not contributing much here. I can run and make copies. If that
All-
would help.
All the updates aren't finalized yet, Joni, so we don't have it to make the copies to give them yet. But
So-
as soon as it's updated, it will be available.
In time for whatever you were saying. All right. The other thing, two other things I want to say is that I think that if you're going to if someone gives an interview of some sensitivity, the interviewee should request a review of what they propose to print before it's printed. Then those misunderstandings won't happen. And that could be part of the procedure. And the final thing is, I thought, I'm just looking at page 18, and I thought that we were going to compare not the budget versus the revised budget and then the change. I thought we were going to compare 2021 to 2022 and show the differences there specifically. But maybe that just never came to fruition. Because you see things like say postage goes up. Well, yeah, by how much from year to the next and why? Kind of thing. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Joni. Anything else from the public? All right. Anything else from the board? Oh, yes, Dave.
First, I wanted to ask staff how long do you think it'll take to make those changes to the budget message? How many days do you think that? How many working days before that might be ready?
So what you're asking is not, it doesn't do itself.
Yeah, I know that. That's why I'm trying to be reasonable. I don't wanna,
So, yeah, but if I have it done by Friday, it's going to be a miracle.
yeah. What I'm thinking,
And that's what I'm shooting for. That's what I have to
Okay.
have done, because I have to have it ready for the packet on
Right.
Friday.
right,
Mhm.
okay. I was confused about weeks, and I thought we had a week, and we don't. You know, so I was, you know. It is gonna be Friday or Saturday, Tammy, I'm sorry. A couple other questions. Are we setting any reserves aside in the public safety area?
Currently, we are meeting all our reserve requirements.
But we haven't set anything specifically aside in public safety.
We're not using any reserves in public safety.
Okay,
Any time that a number shows up in revenue as a reserve, that
Mhm.
means I'm taking money out of reserve to fund that fund.
okay.
We need that extra revenue to fund what's in there.
And we had talked quite a while ago about comparing a parks contract to what we're expending on, you know, and, you know, I suck in my breath when I look at how much we spend on parks. I know that that's one of the two most important things to the town, because when I look at the last 2.5 years in public participation, when have we packed this room? Well, we packed this room when we talked about trails and a master plan. And when Evan was doing those sessions, the room was packed. So we know recreation is really important and parks is important. So I'm not advocating to cut the parks budget, but being more prudent and considering a contract is one thing. So I don't want that to be lost in the shuffle.
And it isn't, we're still pulling numbers to do that comparison. And of course, just a reminder when we did talk about that at the board level, but I think it was before you went on vacation and reset your brain,
Yeah.
which that's why I love vacation. We discussed the fact that at any time we can enter into that contract. So we are pulling together those numbers, and that will not fall off. It will be on the list of priorities that will be presented to the board.
Okay. And similarly, the building inspection. Building inspection?
I anticipate to have the intergovernmental agreement draft to the board no later than the December 14th meeting to start looking at. And of course, we can work through that process, doesn't have to be rushed. But they are actually trying to get it done even quicker, potentially for the 23rd meeting that's coming from the city of Delta.
Right. And what I was wondering is, wouldn't there be a cost saving over an external contractor like we have?
Would there be a cost saving
Yeah.
in what do you mean?
In the building department, wouldn't we be paying less if we're working with the city of Delta than we would be with the current arrangement we have under contract?
Potentially, but because we haven't entered into the agreement, we have to budget for what would happen if we don't have an agreement, or we would budget that as the amount that we then could use if we if the board decides to go with a part-time employee as a building official like they've done previously prior to Dan Reardon, then we have that amount in there that we can look for someone who has that experience and expertise to be able to pay them.
And then the last thing when I was looking over the budget was remembering that I think sidewalks are coming again next year, and I'd really like to put that out to bid again. One thing that I think we're missing the boat on with that would be some kind of VOTEC program with professional supervision, where the people that are in community college would be doing a lot of the work under supervision and learning how to do concrete. And I think we'd get a lot more feet of sidewalk in that kind of approach. And also look at RFPs too, instead of just the one contractor we have and just knee-jerk go with the person we had. I do think they did good work on the handicapped access, and the ones they did last week, it was really high quality, but I'd just like to see some savings there.
Okay, and another option that I have been just preliminary talking to is Chris, who does the bricks. And he's been in conversation. The bricks way exceed what we pay per square yard
Right.
for concrete, but there are grants that he's looking at that can bring some of the costs down. And so we were also looking at those as options for installation also, because they deal better with tree root. So that's another option that we were considering to potentially mix it up a little bit next year. And we're also adding, right now we're in the process of adding a layer to our GIS mapping of all the sidewalks that have been repaired or replaced since the sidewalk fund went into place, so that we can start answering that question for people visually. They'll be able to see really what their $3 paid for, because I know that is a question, especially for people that move in after it's been done. They don't know that that was a section that was done using those funds. So we anticipate to have that near the beginning of the year as well.
Well, when SGM did the analysis of the streets, they did analysis of the sidewalks too.
They looked at the sidewalks as well, but we have the sidewalk inventory and survey that was done several years ago.
Okay.
That's the primary basis for deciding where to do the repairs.
Okay, and then the last question, what about the mayor and trustee? I saw an increase from 7,200 to 9,600, and what's happening with that?
All of it was moved to administration instead of allocated through funds.
Okay, that explains that. I wanted to make sure the public didn't understand that we gave ourselves a raise.
No, you're not allowed to do that. You can only give the next trustees raises.
Yes, Cindy?
So I'm sorry, Tammy, I'm not really sure what what that newspaper, or I didn't read it. She came in and asked if she could ask me some questions about the budget, and the next thing I know, I'm being told that there's an article. I still haven't read it, but when you're talking about budgeting for reserves, so what I was talking to her about, and the sidewalk fund is a perfect example. In the past, we budgeted just the revenue and the expense. And then at the end of the year, I have to do this cleanup, and then that's when the reserves from the previous year gets put in, and then it balances out what was spent. Because we're spending both last year's and this year's revenue because we didn't do repairs last year. So instead of doing that route, I thought it was more transparent if we did it. So you see the line that says sidewalk revenue. Right underneath it, you see reserves. The reserves are the expected revenue through December. Then you see that we're spending all of that because that is what that fund is for. That fund is intended to zero out. It is intended to collect that $3, put it into the sidewalks. So that's how I'm budgeting it, is at the very beginning, to try and make it more transparent, the revenue from this year, the revenue from last year, and spending the whole thing. And that means that we have $64,000 to spend in sidewalk repairs for 2022. That's what I was talking about. Like I said, I don't know what the article says, but from what you said, the reserves aren't being wasted. They're being shown so that you can see how much is coming from the previous year, how much is coming from this year, and how much we're going to put into, because some of that is even from the year before. It's the leftover that wasn't expended. So we're going to spend, but that fund right there, its intent is to spend it to zero. And so I'm budgeting it that way to make it, one, more transparent, and two, thought it was more clear, and three, so we don't have that cleanup at the end of the year like we have done all along.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, anything, yes. What?
Time, yes. Joni Hunt,
Thank you.
220 Northport. I'm wondering, some of the less transparent items, how the numbers are achieved. I just picked one at random. It's sales tax and capital improvements. And I don't know, I figured it went up $15,765 between 21 and 22, and I wondered how that number is derived. That for do you say, well, cost of living, or how do you figure?
How do I figure the increase?
Yeah.
So I have a spreadsheet that shows me all the sales tax that we have actually received in from 2011 to current. The current, we're 10 months in, because we're a month behind on sales tax. So we're 10 months in on what we've received. I annualize that out and figure out where we're at. I figure out the increases over the years. I look at the economy projections from CSU, or from CU, from Delta, from the state, and I look at what the economic expectations are for the state and the county. I then project out where I think and where they think the economy is headed. And most of the time, sales tax goes in a trend. It trends up and then it trends down. So I'm looking at the trends over the years. And then I conservatively estimate the sales tax out for the following year.
So item by item you go through that, or do you come up with one general expense increase percentage across the board, or do you do that for every
And
item?
I do that for every line item, but on sales tax is 3%.
And that's the income, not an expense.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sales tax is an income, and it's 3%. So 1% is going to the capital improvement fund as per ordinance. The second one, 182,000 of the second 1% goes to fund the police department. The
Which is on a
remain,
different page then. Okay, okay, wow, so it's, yeah.
the
I'm
thir-
new at this.
the third
All
one,
right.
the third 1% is allocated through the rest of the general fund to fund the streets, the parks, administration, and the building department.
And expenses are somehow done in a similar manner except in the negative?
That's correct.
All right, well, you must be working
And then
hard.
I also, on expenses, I also have to get a hold of our different vendors and find out what their expectations are on increases, because like Delta County, they're discussing an increase in landfill fees. DMEA has requested through the Utility Commission a 7% increase. CRSA, we have those estimates. Those came in, the work comp came in at 8% increase. Our overall insurance is up 13%. Black Hills and Elevate and TDS is not expecting an increase, but Elevate and DMEA, Black Hills are all expecting up to a 7% increase.
Can that be explained to the public so that they're not so shocked?
That's what I'm,
I mean, you know, to the citizens. Do they understand that? Has that been written somewhere or an article or something? Because those are huge increases that we can't help. And then, but if the public sees this big change, they're going to freak out. But then you're giving those numbers, and of course it's going to go up.
So we do include that projected information in that budget message, that transmittal letter that we're talking about. But ultimately, of course, the town doesn't confirm and publish exactly what changes are being done by the vendors. But we do explain that in the transmittal letter, that those, we've reached out and this is the information we've received. And so those increases have been considered in the budget. So that will be in that transmittal letter.
In a generalized way.
Yes.
Sometimes those specifics are nice. I mean, that meant a lot to me to hear that. So, something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Tammy.
I was just going to say, in the October 26th packet is the first draft of that message, and that is in there. And it's been, seems like it's shown up in the packet other places, but we were definitely aware of that prices are going up, and we will see some rate increases. So, but thanks for bringing it up.
Okay.
I mean, from a layperson's perspective, it can be shocking, and it can be, hard to, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, Paige.
Paige Smith, sorry, Delta Avenue. One last question came up during this conversation. So how is the pot money being integrated into the budget? That $5 per transaction, where is it found?
Do you have a page? I was looking for the page number.
Let's see, what page is that?
8, I believe, of the paper packet. Page 8, page 14 of the,
14 of the electronic
Right.
packet.
So that is the
Operational tax?
yeah, it's the operational tax, I believe. It's not, yes, Cindy.
okay, so how I figured that is I called around and talked to some different people that I knew that had locations or had knowledge of locations or are collecting this, I found that I was thinking 3 or 4 transactions a day at $5 a transaction, annualize that out. Then I found out that I'm way off. In like Gunnison, they had 8 stores operating at the same time. The one new store came in, and they were doing 20 transactions a week. A day, and went up to 80 transactions a day. So I was conservative again. I estimated it on 30 transactions, 3 stores, and that's where I came up with the 117. I did it extremely conservatively because I want to take in what I estimate we're going to take in or more. I don't want to come short. So I estimated very conservatively based on the information I got from the different sources I talked to, and came up with the 117,000, which is in street capital, which goes towards the reconstruction.
And you'll continue to make that a separate entry in your budgeting, since there was a long list of things that money could go towards in the ballot. That's the reason. I'm thinking about trees. That's why I'm bringing it up. That it be a separate line item, that you continue keeping that $5 going into the operational tax column, is what you're
It will
planning.
go into that line item.
Yeah,
if
so we
that's
can
what-
track
in the
that.
general
Okay.
ledger, it will only go into that
there.
line
Great.
item.
Thank you.
Yes, Tammy.
The tree board will be asking consideration of spending some money on possibly like matching town grants for trimming trees and so forth. So the tree board will be asking for that later on. So thanks.
All right, anything else? All right, yes, Dave.
Just want to make sure that you have your questions answered for preparation.
Sorry about that. Definitely do want to receive the confirmation from the board that you understand scenario 6 and how that was in the budget, and that will stay in the budget. And then the only other, I think all the questions are answered. Specific to the numbers, it sounds like everyone understands, and I won't say that we're all happy, but we understand why the numbers are what they are. But before we were to adjourn, if you're moving in that direction, I did want to find out if the board or anyone had any questions about the spreadsheets that were included for the allocations. I just want to make sure everyone, public and board, has an opportunity to ask any questions about this before we go to the public hearing at the next meeting.
Yeah, I did have one question down in public safety, and the officer that is supposed to be the new officer in the, it's not moving. That's what I'm looking for. I can't scroll down to it. Hold on. It is,
Page 29 of the packet.
no. What I'm looking at is, where is it? I even highlighted it, darn it. Oh, here it is. It's on page 34 of the packet. So we have an open officer position, and we're starting that officer, according to this, at $21.75 an hour, when the other new officer, Kramer, is starting at 20. What is the justification for that?
Officer Kramer's part-time and under FTO, and so during that 6 month, and he's part-time until he can move within the required mileage, because he currently lives outside the required mileage, so he can't be on call. So that's why he's a part-time officer, working, he can't work any more than 31 hours. And he is in the process of relocating to the area, at which time he would become full-time. And at the end of his 6-month probationary period and a successful FTO, his increase would kick in.
And that's included in the budget? All
Yes.
that, the increase and everything?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And that would take him to the 2175.
Yes, Joni?
Will the public be able to partake in the review of the budget message?
Yes, it'll all be in the next packet. And,
Okay.
yeah, you can comment on it, yeah, absolutely. Yes, Paige?
All right, while she's coming
yes,
up, can I
Cindy.
just say
Yeah.
that there's a public, you can keep going, please. There is a public hearing at the next meeting on this budget.
Paige Smith. So I remember at one of the last meetings, Trustee Bear had asked for the job descriptions for the 2 new positions. And I don't remember if he said Public Works and Public Utility Directors as well. But I just wondered if the existing Board of Trustees is still interested in seeing those job descriptions. Thank you.
The motion, we discussed that at the last meeting, and they're going to be included with the administrator report in the next packet. And it was the Public Works and Public Utilities as 2 separate positions.
So, if there's nothing else, I want to make sure there's nothing else. Yes, Cindy?
So, the point of, for me, the point of this meeting is to get a consensus that you're okay with this, because this is what I'm going to present at the public hearing. This is, not much is going to be able to change there, and that's what you're going to have to approve in December. So really, right now is the time to, if you want things changed, or you don't like the, or I misunderstood the directions or the comments that I incorporated in here, this is the time that I've got to know that that you're not happy with something, because after this, changing it is going to be extremely difficult.
Sure, Tammy?
So if at the public hearing, somebody brings up a perfectly valid point, is it pointless because it can't be changed, or are you saying we can't make
I
any?
will have time to change it
Okay.
before the final approval in December. I have to revise it. I have from that meeting till the 14th of December. Well, no, it's the week before that I have, that's all the time I have to make adjustments.
I just want to make sure and remind you that we got this last night.
Yeah.
And we have not had time to really go over it. I had to work today. So
So
are you it sounds to me like you're saying, in essence, if we see something later on, forget it. But is that not the
No,
case?
I'm not saying forget it. I'm saying it's important that we get this discussed tonight, because I need to, these changes are not easy. When you guys make these changes, it takes a lot. The reason you got it last night is because it took that long to get it from where it was to what you asked for. So if you don't give me time, I can't get it done.
So what we were looking for was just an overall, a majority of the items, board saying yes, but modifications can be made. But what we didn't want to happen was to have this extra meeting that was scheduled go over all of this, and then at the next meeting have a very large amount of changes present themselves. But of course, if somebody brings something up and the board sees that as a valid point and moves, then it absolutely will be incorporated for the December 14th. And again, for that clarification, because I did make the statement at the last meeting that the budget had to be approved at the December 14th, and I don't know if everyone in the public understood why that was. The reason the budget has to be approved at the board level on the 14th is because the town is required to certify the mill levy by the 15th. And so because our meeting falls on the 14th, we have to certify mill levy, which is in that final budget, to the county on Wednesday, the 15th, and then submit, including that mill levy resolution, to the state by the 31st.
Yes, trustee Kuhn.
I just want to poll my fellow board members and also ask the public. Scenario 6 is pretty serious on the base rate increase. It increases at $5 all at once. Is that correct? And one of the things we talked about in our meetings, and this throws a huge monkey wrench in it, but trying to spread it out over time. And there was, I think it was $5, then 0, then 3%, then 3%. And I wondered if you wanted to bite the bullet that much or go 250, 250, 3%, 3%, and not have such a huge base rate in 1 year.
And the other thing,
I'm sorry. Okay, let me repeat. Is this better? Okay. I want to poll my fellow board members and the public that's here tonight to make sure we understand scenario 6 for water. Scenario 6 increases the base rate in just 1 year by $5. And then there's 0 increase the following year, then 3%, then 3%. So over the next 4 years, there's only 1 year without a base rate increase. And one of the things we discussed in a previous meeting was 250, spreading it out over all 4 years instead. So it would be something like 250, 250, then 3%, then 3%. Because it's quite a hit on people who have fixed incomes to jump at $5 all at once. So, yeah, so I just want to make sure that we're really clear, because changing this scenario next time is really a hassle for Cindy.
And to be clear, if I may, it will be a hassle this time as well if you do, because that's really why we drove down and wanted to get that really cleared at the last meeting, because it took until last night to get that scenario worked in and make sure that everything else budgets, because you change one number on one page and it affects numbers on every page. And so I want to say that it did, was the reduction from the $8. Also, while that is the intention of the scenario 6, this board can't tie another board. So another board, every time you review the budget every year, may change that percentages and amounts. And it was also, after reviewing and finalizing numbers too, it is the intention to come to the board also and ask to modify our utility relief program number. And the modification that we're looking at would, for those that receive LEAP, which means they qualify as low-income households, the modification would include the increase as well as a couple of dollars. So they actually wouldn't feel, the low income that receive LEAP wouldn't feel the $5 increase on base rate. And the reason that we can bring that and present that to the board is because the actual number of people in our community that apply for LEAP and receive that benefit is not substantial, and so it's not a large hit to the budget that causes an issue somewhere else.
and yeah, I ran the figures on the LEAP. If with 24 people on LEAP, which is approximately what we've got, it's only $2,800 that we lose in revenue to bring it to a $10 relief for LEAP people. Yes, Joni.
If I were to see $5 1 year, 0 the next, and whatever you said, 3 and 2 or whatever, I would get so discouraged as a member of the public, because that wouldn't make any sense to me unless it's highly footnoted. It wouldn't make sense to me, and it would be discouraging as a member of the public to be, you feel a little whipsawed. Why would it be $5 and then 0? It hurts transparency unless it's very clear why. But I think it's damaging. So.
Yes,
Is that how it is now, 5 and 0? I don't know what page that is.
No, it's, so the revenues are included in the water, if you go to the water enterprise fund, the revenues are, the $5 is included in that.
And
And
then the
Cindy was
0.
explaining. No, we don't, that's the 2023 budget. And we're not looking at the 2023 budget
But
today.
where did you get those?
Because, so projected out, what scenario 6 said was that we would increase the base rate $5 this year, that we would not increase the base rate in 2023, that we would increase it 3% in 2024 and 3% in 2025. But every board will have to make that decision. So all we can do is
$5.
say, yeah, we're doing $5
Now.
Based on this scenario, and then the next board can make the decision whether they're going to stay with that or not.
So that's quite a precedent, though, right? I
Well, not really. The board does
the
that.
$5. Oh, that happens a
Yeah,
lot.
we've raised the base rate on the water several times, and numerous times, and the board looks at it every year.
Oh. Okay.
So-
I know. Well, thanks.
Okay,
Mayor.
so yeah, Mick. All right,
Hi, yes.
Yeah,
all right.
Sorry.
I'm going to let
Yes,
Mick
sorry.
say, and then
we've had professionals review did a water study. They suggested scenario 2, 3, or 6. Last meeting, we voted on 6. That's what you guys put in. I think that's what we need to stay with.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
agree.
Mick.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too. So Karen.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
No, turn it on. There you go.
Aye.
Yeah, talk.
Said
Talk.
aye.
Okay.
She said aye.
Okay, all right. Christine.
I just wanted to know what the actual number is when you reference 3%. What would that be? $5 or?
We have no idea. It'll be dependent. 2 years from now, the board would look at the water rates and, yeah.
We would know that because it's 3% of the base rate. So by then, the base rate would be up to maybe $42. And so you take 3% of that, the base rate. She's asking about the base rate. What
Okay.
would the 3% on the base rate be? Take the 37 and take 3% of that. And it would be that on the first year, and then that new total you have,
Got
you would
it.
do another
Okay.
3% on that.
Thank
And then
you.
you'd see the numbers.
Thanks for the.
So it would be approximately $2. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry. I'm gonna I was just going to try to explain to Joni why it was $5 this year and no dollars in this projection. And the reason behind that was that previous years when we were looking at base rate increases, we were only looking at the immediate project, and the town has not been building and funding for the longer term capital improvement projects beyond just a year or two that we were looking at. And one of the things we're really working toward and plan to have completed early in 2022 is a actual formal capital improvement project that shows that. And so when Tai Long with RCAC did that cost to service analysis, he included a 30-year, well, he included up to 100-year, but under the revision, he did a 30 and a 50-year projection. And the reason that it's $5 year one instead of broken up a little bit smaller is because next year we were funding large projects, which is that tank lining that we're talking about that has some lead in it, and an altitude valve and vault installation that will help us so that we have redundancy between our two water plants for storage. And that's why it's a larger number. It's because we have a finite number we need to hit in 2022. And so this is what we need to do to get that number in 2022.
Go ahead.
While you're walking up there, I just want to say there was a presentation by Tai Long on November 16th, which is online.
Okay.
Yeah,
It-
it's
it-
worth watching.
$5 represents what percent?
Just one
Never
moment,
mind.
we'll tell
I'll
ya.
look at the presentation.
We'll tell you. I
How's
don't know
that?
that he gave it. He didn't give it by percentage, so we'll tell you. Just give us 1 minute to do some math.
Oh, thanks.
Math brain doesn't work that well. It should, but it doesn't. So a $5 is about a 15% increase of the base rate currently on the residential side only, yes.
Yes, Paige.
So getting back to the administrator's message, I really would like to make a request that on the section where you talk about the water increases, that you exactly say how much they're increasing. Don't expect people to go back and look at their water bill to see that it went from 32 to 40. I think KVNF was
Yes,
probably
we'll
a good
do that
indicator of
better.
that. And that was, yeah.
Yes.
Because people will be pleasantly surprised. It's not going up $40. So, but the other thing in this administrator's report is, so the new rates are going to get approximately $155,000. If all the new salaries go in, I think it's about $242,000. So we're not ahead on our budget in terms of addressing these water issues. So I'd almost like there to be a little bit more clarity here that there's going to have to be that, well, here's what I'd like to say, is the board has got to have a crafted, huge discussion on infrastructure and how it's going to be paid for. And that hasn't happened for this budget session, but I think my recommendation is it be one of the first things that comes out of the gate in 2022 to really start making a 1-year, 5-year plan for those things that have to be done, because I've looked at the pictures of what that 2 million gallon tank looks like inside. I have a huge water filter. I am not drinking the water out of the tap. I know what the inside of that tank looks like. It's horrible. And it has to be dealt with. And we can't just keep saying, well, now it's going up more, and what's happening here is there's not the juggling game, and you're not being honest in here to say there has to be more rate increases and money that can be allowed for matching funds for grants. I mean, it's just too silent on that. So please, let's deal with the water. Thank you.
And I do want to tell you, too, that what you're seeing floating in the water is food-grade wax. That's what that lining is actually made of.
Okay, Dave.
I'd like to make a suggestion that Ty's report be added to the next packet so that people don't have to dig back and see, because I think that's a really big justification for why. So someone that has fresh eyes all of a sudden and wants to look at the budget doesn't have to go back into another packet to find it. It's and also posted on, I think it's posted on the website.
It's not on the website, but what I was
okay.
going to ask, and if you're comfortable with this, because some of the feedback too sometimes is that when we start having these really large packets, that it's too much to shuffle through and to get through.
Mm-hmm.
So some of what I was, a recommendation or suggestion that had been made previously to me was that some of those things that are initially presented in a packet, that then we can use the Muni Docs and link it on the agenda summary form, so you have the link to go to it instead of having it as an additional page to the packet. So
Great.
if the board is comfortable with that, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Just so that people don't have to go, well, what meeting was it that packet was in? Because that's what I had. getting
Yeah,
prepared
I've
for
started
this.
trying to do some links on
And-
those summaries, so I'll do that.
Yeah, and I didn't weigh in on this, but I did want to say that I do support this, and I think that this board has to kind of be a bite the bullet board and do some things that haven't been done in the past, and that is to look at the long range, because we're in this situation right now because previous boards have not looked at what's going to happen 20 years from now, 40 years from now, 60 years from now, and try to prepare for that. And we made a baby step toward that, but future boards are going to have to take this into account too. So I hope, anyone that wants to run for the board, I encourage them. We're going to be talking about these 2 vacant positions we have on our next agenda. And for me, going for a vacant position was really helpful to get my feet wet and decide whether I wanted to. And of course, one of the foolish decisions I ever made was running for election and getting a petition. But I did that anyway. I'd gotten my feet wet. So I want to encourage citizens, there's a 6-month trial to know whether you want to do this or not.
And so, speaking about the next board meeting, I want us to be dead sure that 3 is going to be a quorum, because we have some serious stuff we have absolutely got to deal with. We cannot put the budget off. We cannot do, we have stuff we have got to deal with. And Mick has a serious family issue that he's going to have to go and address. And so that will be 3 trustees and the mayor.
I have, as soon as we had that conversation, I have already spoken with Bo, and Bo is getting the information referencing CRS and looking at the ordinance so he can have a clear and concise opinion to provide to the board before Friday, which is when our packet is due. So we'll have that out to the board and included in the packet so that it's outlined with state statute and our municipal code.
So this feels like the deck chairs on the Titanic.
It is, and the Titanic is slipping, and we're all going down. Yeah. All right.
No, we're not. No.
That's
We're
because
good.
we have
We're
iceberg
not all going
insurance.
down.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else. Yeah, Tammy.
We called a special meeting so we can make a decision, and I know that Dave earlier said he wanted to know what decisions the board needs to make. Do we just do this on consensus, or do we need a motion?
Do you need a motion?
I mean, we called a special meeting so we could vote, so.
Right.
But we have not had a vote on anything, so.
Well, I would appreciate a vote of agreement with where we have the moving. Now, of course, I will do contingent upon getting back up on the explanation from the town attorney about the capital expenditure for the updated comprehensive plan. But it would be good, just even if it was a motion and vote to accept what was presented tonight, and again confirming the scenario 6. You already voted for that, so you don't necessarily have to again.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Can you say that again? Contingent upon.
Confirmation of the ability to pay for a comprehensive plan update through a capital improvement fund.
Ability to, I'm slow.
Yeah, to
Ability?
pay for the comprehensive plan update
Right.
through the
To
capital
pay
improvement.
for,
Yes, to
okay.
pay for that through the capital improvement fund. Because a capital improvement typically is a tangible item. And while the comprehensive plan is tangible if I print it, that's not necessarily the same.
Okay, and back up, I'm really sorry. Contingent on confirmation of our ability to pay for the comprehensive plan
Update from the
Update.
capital improvement fund.
through okay. Capital improvement plan, not
Yes.
plan. Through CIP. All right, I move that we present this draft 2022 budget at the November 23rd budget hearing, contingent upon confirmation from Bo on our ability to pay for the updated comprehensive plan. No, through the capital improvement fund, thank you. And
Second.
contingent upon verification on if 3 members will make a quorum.
Go, Tammy. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That motion passes.
I want to thank Trustee Meck for that suggestion. I think that clears it up and also makes it a lot easier if we have some glitches with the quorum thing.
On that note, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Did you want your copy back? Do you have different? Okay. I didn't know if you had special.
Not mine. Not me.